Okay, we are live right now, so we can start the chat. And before we go further, let me just welcome all of you all to this session of Kahani Kancheti, which, as you know, we call ourselves a platform, a digital platform for conversing culture. Now, don't ask me what conversing culture means, because as somebody like me who has come from advertising, we are very fond of using these little two-liners, and that's what exactly has happened. So, the reason why we are back on our live chats after a long time is because we had just had 3 months of election. So everybody was busy calculating on the YouTube channels, and this time the YouTube channels were predicting everybody was a political analyst. So some said 400 par, some said not so 400 par. So it got into somewhere in between. But so these kind of conversing culture was no longer the main thing. So we are back again. And to talk about today's show, I'll introduce everybody to our guest over here today. But the important thing that I have today is actually this book, The Swinging 70s. Now, I first got a connect to the Swinging 70s from Maitryee. She had put this up on the Facebook, and I saw it, and I said, I actually thought that she had bought the book, and she was telling others how much she liked it. So what I did was that I did book on Amazon, but then I was told there's a small wait. So after the wait, the book came. When the book came, I found that, oh, hello, Maitryee herself is a contributor. But believe me, and anybody who is listening, who perhaps belongs to my generation, or maybe plus minus idhar udhar thoda sa, this is a book which you must buy, because it's everything about the 70s. And this is the 70s in which at least we grew up. On one side, we were everything that this book has got, believe you me. I'm absolutely enthralled with this book. At the same time, we, the 70s children, or the delayed midnight children, as we call ourselves, we were also getting into Woodstock, and we were getting into the Doors and the rock music and Joe Cocker and everything. Side by side, Gulzar Saab was also happening. Shailendra had just passed away. So it was a very, very exciting time. And if you talk about 70s, we had just crossed the great political upheaval of the Naxalite movement and other political movements. So all that combining, 70s was just too much. But having said that, let me give you some biometrics about the book. I call them biometrics. The biometrics has that there's some very interesting biometrics. One, it is a 570-page book. I'm showing you the thickness, right? Which means that you'll have to take quite some time to go through it. And it is worth it, because each article, you just can't finish it off in 15 minutes. They're all gems inside, believe you me. And some of the gems we will just discuss in a moment. Interestingly, other than the essays by different authors, contributors, and the people, we also have a very interesting section of a trivia quiz built into it. So I would also like to talk about Harini Srinivasan and Vinod Krishnan, who actually had put up those quizzes. And what we are going to do is today, during the show, I have just randomly picked up 4 such quizzes. I'm going to ask those quizzes, and let's see what the response is like. It will be there somewhere coming up. Ideally, we should have given them some coupon or something, like you have. Now, incidentally, this book has actually 5, but I'm using 4 sections. The second biometric is 4 sections. One is on moods and memories, where the whole thing starts. Interestingly, when we are talking about 70s, the word comes to our mind are blockbusters. But what has started here, the first chapter is on Nishant, which is somewhere between slightly off the blockbuster towards the parallel. And then I have a very interesting article, and I wish Shammo was here. He said he's watching cricket because he's a cricket sports editor. Shammo Dasgupta is a very interesting one about which you must read. It's called Bachchanpur to Ghatakpur. Now, why Bachchanpur should go to a Ghatakpur is something that you will have to read those 5 pages to get a hang of it. And other than that, this moods and memories have something other than just cinema. There's a chapter on cassettes, plain simple cassettes which we bought, which broke, we had to use that pencil to re-spool the whole thing. And it talks about the fact that and they talk about that, the how cassettes made the Hindi cinema of the 70s so popular, and something that we hum and sing even now. There is also a chapter on the lyrics of the 70s. तो जो कुछ भी चाहिए 70s के लिए इस किताब में सब है. That's it. One liner. I'm sure my guests agree with me. The second is, of course, on icons and idols. Oh wow, that's an amazing section. Then you have the themes and the tropes, of which I think three contributors to the tropes and themes are here. And then, of course, there is a very interesting section of Insider's Insight, in which Nirupama has interviewed Dr. Agashe, Subhash Ghai, Vishal Bharadwaj, and there are personal contributions by Rajat Kapoor, Shriram Raghavan, and even Ketan Mehta. So that's the big picture of the book, the biometrics, as I call it. And we also have something very interesting. There are some lovely posters of the 70s that you will not see again. They have been inserted, color posters of some of the film that we have seen in the cinema hall. Also, there are posters, there are covers of film magazines. I spotted a Stardust and a Star in Style. Oh my God. I mean, these are absolutely things that have, and of course, there is something very interesting more than that. There is a galaxy at Rajkot. There is what shall I say, a kind of a arithmetic, or really it's a piece of accounting as to how Sholay did from the first week to I think the 37th week that it ran. And that I thought was a marvelous selection to put how Sholay was doing in a place called Rajkot at Plaza. Now, having said all that, now I think it's time for me to start. Oh yes, there is something else towards the end, and that is Nirupama's 20. Now, if I were into promoting this book, I would have asked others to also contribute their 20 of that period, their 20 of the period a little better. So that's what. But then you can argue with her, you can argue with everybody, but there are those 20s. And incidentally, there is one film which struck me was Shatranj, which she has also put it in that. So now let me bring you to Nirupama, Nirupama Kotru over here. Well, I'm taking the simplest way out. After this, I will not be talking, I'll be just pulling the trigger. So bear with me, because I have to introduce my guest to you. I'm doing the simplest thing. I'm using whatever is written on the book, because otherwise to create my own thing would have taken a lot of time. It would have been very difficult. But the rest are crisp. Ratnottama, you have taken almost a page. So I will try and do some crisping of that page for a while. In your case, the others are easy to manage. So here is Nirupama. I was just asking her what exactly is she now, because she is from the services, and after having been in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, where she was posted as Director of Films, by the way, and she spent more than 3 years managing film units such as the NFDC and Films Division, handling challenging policy matters such as censorship and archiving, driving initiatives such as a single window clearance for film shootings, besides promoting Indian cinema at film festivals abroad. She's been also responsible for the National Film, she has been initiative like the National Film Awards and IFFI at Goa. Now, after this stint, she kept her passion alive, writing articles on films and film music. And until recently, as Joint Secretary Culture, she nurtured the National Academics of Music, Dance, Theatre and Art, and helped reinvent leading national museums. She actively participates in cultural and literary festivals where she promotes films, theatre and literature. Incidentally, just before we came on the chat, I was asking her, are you still with Ministry of Culture? She said, no, I'm now with the Ministry of Coal. So from Sanima to Koila, that's the bit, but then that's what it is. I can see you, Nirupama, smiling at that, but that's how administrative life is. Now, Shantanu Rouchoudhuri, who is the user over here, because he says he's an editor, so therefore he is the user. He is a critic and a columnist. In 2017, he was named Editor of the Year by the apex publishing body Publishing Next. He is a film and a music buff, and that we will see as we go along. Has been a consultant writer and editor for the film website cinemazi.com, and writes regularly on books, films, music for a number of platforms, including the Telegraph of Kolkata. He started writing on a regular basis only in 2017, when Anupama Chopra asked him to cover Bengali cinema for Film Companion. He has over 200 bylines in his credit so far, and he has worked with the Academy of Motion Pictures and the Film Heritage Foundation for their oral history programs, covering interviews with Soumitra Chatterjee and Madhuri Mukherjee. He has also contributed an essay on Sai Paranjpe to Films Through Women's Eyes, 17 Indian Directors, published by Suchitra Film Society. His poetry, and he's also a poet, by the way. Recently, I've seen some poetry of it that he has talked about in Facebook about a week back. He's also published. He's also a published author with 2 books to his credit: Whims, a book of poems, and published by Writers Workshop, and Icons from Bollywood, which is published by Penguin Puffin. At present, he's an editor-in-chief of Om Books, who have published this book in particular we are talking about. My other guest over here, Ratnottama Sengupta, she turned director with And They Made Classics. That's a very interesting documentary on the unique bond between scriptwriter Nobindu Ghosh, her father, and the legendary director Bimal Roy. She has been a journalist for 44 years, writes for newspapers and journals, and she has written on Hindi films for the Encyclopedia Britannica. She has been a member of the Central Board of Film Censors, of the NFDC Script Committee, served on the National Film Awards jury, and has won a national award. She has also been the editor of an entertainment website, cinebengal.com, and former arts editor of the Times of India. Currently, she writes columns in Borderless Journal, for which she has recently, I've seen a poetry that has been recently published, and she has talked about it. And I think that particular poem, Ratnottama, should be made public. It was an amazing piece of poetry that you had published the other day, the translation. Okay, and so continue with her. There are some most interesting points about her. She has a book on Ashok Kumar, From Bombay Talkies to Bollywood, for a volume on Phalke winners, Master of the Middle Path, centenary homage to Rishikesh Mukherjee for the 20th Kolkata International Film Festival brochure. And she also features in Mona Lisa Does Not Smile, an anthology published by Om Books, and she's the author of Krishna's Cosmos and several other volumes. She has also edited Dadamuni, The Life and Times of Ashok Kumar, Mistress of Melodies in 2020, that Bird Called Happiness, Me and I 2017, Kadam Kadam in 2016, and Chunida Kahaniya in 2009. So it's a huge amount of body of work that she's done. I'll just push on to Gajra. Well, Gajra is actually a writer of cult and award-winning and record-breaking TV serials like Astitva, Ek Prem Kahani, and Balika Bodhu. Well, she's also a novelist and a short story writer. Her published works include the novel Broken Melodies, Once Upon a Star, and Girls Don't Cry, a collected volume of stories, Autumn Blossoms. He's also a contributor to the anthology of The Moving Finger, Writers in Writing, published by Om Books International, of which I think I did attend the launch in Kolkata the other day. Now, that brings me to Maitryee, who I have known for a very long time. She's a poet and a writer, and she has 4 books to her credit. The Hungriest, that's where we connected. The Story of a Poetry Revolution from Bengal and Bihar in the 1960s. 1 dozen. Hassan Azizul Haq, which is the translation. She has a book on Uttam Kumar and Suchitra Sen, which also, by the way, Maitryee, I picked up the other day from Lalbari. Yes, we can debate on the songs that you have selected, but yeah, Mazedar. And she's the editor of the Bangalore Review, a literary journal. And Maitryee has written for journals like Himal, South Asian Scroll, Outlook, National Geographic, the Hindustan Times, Sunday Guardian, amongst others. Her forthcoming book, which we hope to see very soon, we are all very keen, is on the eccentric genius poet Binoy Mojumdar. So we hope Chaka will come back very soon amongst us. And that leaves me with Amborish. I'm sorry, Amborish is a Mumbai-based writer, biographer, and a film historian. His book, In a Cult of Their Own, Bollywood Beyond Box Office, won a special mention at the 66th National Film Awards 2019. He is also the author of Sri Devi, the South Years 2024. He has written for Outlook, First Post Filmfare, Half Post Movie Notebook, and the Free Press Journal, among others. For the past couple of years, Amborish has been working on the official biography of Raj Khosla. So everybody covered, everybody done. I like to start off.
What an interesting topic, Raj Khosla.
Yeah, yeah.
It has some such interesting movies. Shujita, with your permission, can I read one biography over here? The biography is just, the bio is just one line, and I find it so interesting. It's the bio of Rajat Kapoor. Rajat Kapoor, which says, Rajat Kapoor is a filmmaker and a theatre director, and sometimes also an actor.
That's Rajat for
Such
you.
a sublime subtlety. We don't see it these days. So I'm so, it just struck me.
I'll tell Rajat that he'll be happy.
Yes, please.
Give us the bio, and you know how he is.
I mean,
mobile phone, by the way. Most of my contributors are eccentric, so Rajat is the limit. He doesn't have a mobile phone, and it's very difficult to get in touch with him.
Please tell him that you don't see subtlety these days, but this was top-level subtlety.
Yeah. I think we should let Sujit ji now steer the conversation.
No. Well, it's like this. Maitryee, I think that's the right note to start off. We are all talking about eccentrics in the industry and eccentrics ourselves, otherwise we shouldn't be over here. My first question is, of course, my first trigger is to both Nirupama ji, you and Shantanu. What made you all get onto this book?
Yeah.
I mean, why did you all do this?
Do you want to go first, or may I?
Go on.
Okay, so I was just thinking today, since all of us are very fond of these 3 S's, so there were 3 S's which would push this book. One was serendipity, one was Soumitra Chatterjee, and social media. So we all like to mention social media, but Shantanu found me on Facebook.
There was Suman Ghosh also.
Suman Ghosh, 4 S's, and Shantanu, of course, the great SRC, as we call him. So 5 S's. So Shantanu found me through Facebook and invited me for this book launch of a book written by director Sujoy Ghosh on Soumitra. And since Soumitra Chatterjee is somebody I deeply admire, and I've had the fortune of meeting him also the year he won the Dada Saheb Phalke committee, I was the secretary of the committee which selected him. So I was like thrilled. I said, sure. So that's when we first met. This was in April 22. And after that, I think he spoke to me and said, I'm interested in this idea. I've had it for some time. And would you like to come on board? So that time I was very deep into this, researching this collected works of Balraj Sahni and his wife Santosh Sahni in Hindi. And you don't get them, they're out of print, very difficult to get. So I had got all the volumes, and I was reading them. And I was very keen to quickly translate it into English, although there is a small autobiography of his in English, but not the collected works. So Shantanu promised me, and I'm still going to hold him to this promise. He said, I'll help you with that, but ye karna hai.
Already on the way.
You better not ditch me. You're all witness to this. So he said, wo kar lenge, par pehle ye karte hain. So I said, sure. And then I talked to a few people. He said, think over it. So I spoke to Syed Mirza Sahab, who I've known since my INB days. He was director FTI, chairman FTII. He was very happy. He said, "मैं तो copy खरीद रहा हूँ." I said, "नहीं, आपको लिखना भी है." But he was busy with 2 books he was writing. He's a very prolific writer. In fact, he published a book on Kundan Shah last year, if some of you have seen it. I Know the Psychology of Rats. It's a hilarious book with lovely illustrations. So he said, ki, what a great decade. He was very happy. He said, especially 73 to 83 is the best time when parallel cinema flourished, and of course, blockbusters and what we used to call middle of the road cinema. Now those distinctions have blurred again. So, him and Gulzar Saab, people like them, these are all legendary filmmakers. We are fortunate to know them. So, with their blessings, we just started reaching out to all our film writer friends. Shantanu's, my friends, and common friends of ours. And I also wanted to bring film industry insiders. I thought an insider's perspective is good, because what a film would do for me or any of my contributors or for you, we are just film buffs. We are crazy about films, but these guys are in the profession. So I wanted to know what films of 70s, how it has shaped some of their own filmmaking. So people like Rajat, because he's a disciple of Mani Kaul. He's considers him his guru, and he's written about that. Or Subhash Ghai, who was in the FTII and started making films in the 70s. Or Dr. Mohan Nagashe, who was in parallel cinema, did very well. Ketan Mehta, who also started in the 70s. So since I knew all of them, and we met Sri Ram also, he was a brilliant filmmaker. So it was really fantastic. Varun Grover, he said, I'll write about lyricists. They're all wonderful people. So we're really fortunate. All of them came on board and contributed. And it, like I've said, like Majroo Sahab said, मैं अकेला ही चला था जानिबे मंजिल मगर लोग साथ आते गए और कारवां बनता गया. So that's literally what happened. We started with a few of us and 20, and then suddenly double हो गया, पता नहीं चला. We are 44. I said, Shantanu, क्या कर रहे हो? Such a fat book. Who's going to read this? He said,
No,
नहीं, it'll do.
I needed
That's a
doorstoppers. I needed
massive book. Seriously, look at the size.
you know.
Yeah,
So
in fact,
yeah,
one of my
like
friends
one
was
of the
complaining, I can't lie down and read the book. And Shantanu said, tell me to sit up. What the hell? हमें तो और पेज डालने हैं. So,
अभी तो डालना है इसमें 100 पेजेस और बढ़ने हैं अभी रीप्रिंट
God.
में.
So that's what it was. Shantanu, go ahead. Yeah.
So, Sujit, one of the things that happened was the moment Nirupama mentioned Saeed Akhtar Saab, and Saeed Akhtar ji brought in the very interesting question of, Yado Ki Barat and to Ardh Satya, kind of the change of cinema and the continuity of violence. And very interestingly, the moment I approached Amborish on the book, saying, and the first thing he suggested was, the two Vijays, the Vijay of Salim Javed and Vijay Tendulkar, and Salim Javed also wrote Yado Ki Barat. And it's sort of the whole thing started falling into place very serendipitously. Just imagine Nirupama talking to Saeed Akhtar Mirza Sahab, and Saeed Akhtar Mirza mentioning Yado Ki Barat's to Ardh Satya being a sort of, though Ardh Satya came in 1982, but decades don't confine themselves to the decadal years. They sort of 70s has a residue of the 60s, and they go into the 80s also. And Amborish kind of said, and it's one of the most fascinating essays to read the violence of the era in cinema through the works of Salim Javed, and and Yado Ki Barat was one really in terms of the violence that it showed on screen, was a breakthrough in commercial Hindi cinema. And of course, Vijay Tendulkar's violence was a different violence altogether. So it just sort of came in. And for me, 70s is, I'm a sucker for nostalgia. It's a very bad place to be, nostalgia world. But then 70s is nostalgia for a time and space. That's how I begin my introduction, for a time and place one has never known. I did not live the 70s in the theaters. I envy people who have done that. I envy people who were in the lines for Dawn and Diwar and talking about all those. I experienced the 70s only in the 80s. Particularly when Amitabh Bachchan went on political sabbatical, on a cinematic sabbatical into politics, and a lot of the Bachchan films were released in theaters at that point of time, and I caught some got an idea of what the 70s must have been through those films, because they were bigger hits at that point of time than the fresh films that were coming out, new films that were coming out at that point of time. So, and everything, I talk about cinema with my brother almost every week, almost every day. There's a WhatsApp message, and it invariably comes to the 70s, like be it R.D. Burman, be it the stars, be it Amitabh Bachchan, be it Sanjeev Kumar, everything is just the 70s.
And very correctly, you all have got everything that is 70s in the Hindi cinema into the between both the covers of the book. And I think Ratnottama and I are probably the only two people here who probably have experienced what you said you missed out, which is actually standing in the queue too. I don't think Ratnottama stood in the queue because she was a part of the system, but we have done that, and it was a big thing to be a part of the line. So therefore we have actually lived it. But tell me something. Getting so many people who were every article that some I've gone deep into it, some I had to go more deep into it. And if anybody sees the state of this book with all these tags over here, they'll think I'm sitting for an exam. Well, there are no exams, there is no NEET, there is no NIT, so thankfully I'm not. But it has been actually like sitting for an exam. Believe me, and I'll tell you why. Having said that, collecting this so many contributors, how did that happen, and how long did it take for both of you all to put it together?
2 years actually.
Yeah, two full years, and I think we did a pretty good job, though. Nirupama and I fought towards the end of it that it's taking too much time and all of that. But what happened was, you tend to get greedy, like a lot of the contributors, of course, are friends of Nirupama. I have made some friends over the publishing, people like Balaji, Anirudh, they all published their first books. Balaji, Anirudh, Abhijit Ghosh, they've all published with me. So it was easy to start off. But then my point was, and Jai Arjun Singh's first book was also with me. Uday Bhatia's first book, Satya, I signed on, and then I moved on from Harper. It came out. In fact, it's interesting how many film books I have signed on. I signed on, they've just announced, the HarperCollins has just announced the Kamal Hassan book today. And, that's a book that I signed on in 2014 or 15 with Kanishk Gupta, the authorized book of on Kamal Hassan by K. Hariharan. So, like, a lot of these contributors were there, but then I also wanted to bring in some other voices, people who have not so much contributed to, and of course, Nirupama got all the insiders through her, connects in the industry. Sriram Raghavan's essay is fantastic, the way he handles the noir cinema. But I also wanted, like, I've not, Maitryee has written on Bengali, on Uttam and Suchitra, but her forte has always been the literary poetry side of it, and I wanted to see how she engages with a decade like the 70s, which is very in your face and all of that. So Gajra, I knew, again, somebody who has always been writing fiction, and I sort of wanted her to address, and she said, and one of the things was just not to talk about the Amitabh Bachchans and Rajesh Khannas, but also bring in people like Sanjeev Kumar, for example. And she said, I loved the old Sanjeev Kumar, the Mota Sanjeev Kumar, who was against every rule of the film hero.
Buddha Sanjeev Kumar, as she said.
Yeah,
Okay,
Buddha
Shantanu,
Shantanu, she said I was the only young girl who loved this old man.
Yeah, and she was surrounded by people who loved Rajesh Khanna and Shashi Kapoor, and here was this Tondu guy, who had no body to speak of, but what a body of work, so and also Amborish suggested the chapter. It was a no-brainer. Anybody who suggests a chapter like that has to be in it. Ratnadi, of course, been part of the whole generation of the 70s. Then the cassettes, the one that you mentioned, Bobby Singh, like again, I've been following. He's a super guy with tremendous facts and trivia and all. And I suggested something to him. Then he came back saying, I want to write on the cassette revolution, which actually at the end of the 70s, the LP and the cassette revolution actually changed the way we viewed cinema. So all of these contributors sort of, and then I became greedy. Okay, let's add this, let's add that. And I'm still telling Nirupama, we missed out Vanraj Bhatia. We missed out an essay on posters of the era. We missed out an essay on the sound designers. I did not get a good essay on the cinematographers. So there's still scope
There's
for
lots to cover, yeah.
And I have to come in here and tell you that you have to reserve a few pages for out of that 100 pages that you'll have for how the screen shrunk.
Yeah.
How from big screen to videos to television, how the screen shrunk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
so
Shantanu, I'd hold you there because since you mentioned Sanjeev Kumar, I cannot but take on Gajra. With my first question, I absolutely, when I first read that, and then you gave me her number, and I spoke to her, and I said, you must still be infatuated with Sanjeev Kumar, and she said yes. I said that's it. But therefore, my question to you is that how come you did not have this? From Sound of Music to Hari Bhai was understandable. Very conservative parents who didn't want you to see the film till Biti Na Bitai happen. That is understandable. But why not Amitabh Bachchan? I mean that at 70s, at that point of time, Amitabh Bachchan was the Diwar, he was Don, he was everything. And you chose for a portrait, who was a very good actor, which you have said later. So tell us about your what shall I say, your infatuation with Sanjeev Kumar.
I think my love for Sanjeev Kumar just evolved with his roles. For me, he was this who actually made substance into style. The heading of the book. Because that was my very first experience, the Biti Na Bitai, and there was a very personal kind of resonance. When I watched him with that shawl and that kurta pajama, and it just reminded me, for me, he was father material to start with. And then when it went on to, suddenly my love had changed. It's totally inexplicable. It is blind, it is deaf, dumb, everything. And I still sort of get goosebumps when I watch him. I loved him in Andhi. So, when Shantanu and I were chatting at a lit fest, I remember around maybe 3 years ago or something. And that's the time, Baaton Baaton Mein, when I spoke about how much I loved Sanjeev Kumar and how his image, that image, the first image which has stayed in my mind, reminded me so much of my father, and we were speaking about my father. So that's when he suddenly jumped up and said, would you like to do a piece on him? And I said, I'm not a film historian. I'm not an archivist. I really don't know where I fit in. So maybe this will get a little gushy, maybe. But then the gushiness and the infatuation, I think a lot of regular girls and boys would relate to, except that my choice was unusual. I've used a description in the essay, unique ordinariness. I think that's what really hit me. Here's this guy who's ordinary but so unique. He was, or maybe I continue to be infatuated. 40 years post when it started. So that was my relationship and continues to be with Sanjeev Kumar.
And as a matter of fact, Gajra, there's a wonderful
about his pot belly. It's very charming.
Okay, all right, we take that. But I must tell you, at some point of time while describing, when you were seeing Parichay, when you were watching Parichay, suddenly you said, and suddenly he appeared. It was him, it was like that, the man from our dream suddenly coming up in front, oh, hello. And that, I think, said it all. But here is a little trivia for you. I know you have called him the secret classic hero, which I think he was. by all means. But there is something that I want to add over here as a little bit of trivia. ITC cigarettes in the 70s had actually launched a brand called Superstar. And the person who they had got to endorse and model was Sanjeev Kumar. Now the shot and the ad had those 1970s or even 60s, those rich man's house with a staircase, almost a circular staircase going around, and he was standing over there with that Superstar in his hand and signed Sanjeev Kumar. Now, don't ask me what happened to the brand. That's another story.
Didn't
You
he
have not heard of
also
it.
model for Bagpiper Whiskey? I
He
thought
did model for Bagpiper
Yeah.
Whiskey. He did model for Bagpiper Whiskey. But
Because
Superstar was
he
actually
loved his
developed on
drink a
him.
lot. Of course.
Superstar was on him, something like Nike did on Jordan. So it was, but in fact, just before I came for this session, I actually got in touch with my fellow colleague who actually worked on that brand. And then he has also given me why the brand didn't work out. But that's another story, another place. I'm not presenting a case study over here. But yes, Sanjeev Kumar was the superstar. No mistake about
Sanjeev,
that.
the thing is, he was at the same time he was playing the lover opposite Jaya Bahaduri, Jaya Bahaduri's father, Jaya Bahaduri's father-in-law, so everything. So
Oh, absolutely correct. Yeah, there you are. No, now Gajra, that was really a piece I think which everybody must read, because it is not just you have not just done like a historian, like done a character. You have gone deep into him emotionally, and therefore I was seeing Sanjeev Kumar in a slightly different perspective after I read that piece. But now I want to come back to for a minute. I want to come back to Ratnottama, not for a minute. This is going to be a pretty long one. Ratnottama, this thing that you wrote called The Girl Next Door. My first question, how did you get that much amount of data and research? It was mind-boggling. I mean, every character, you have not just said they did this and did that and went away, but there has been such a lot of data that you have pushed into the whole thing. How long did it take you to put all that together?
2 years.
See, no. Nirupama knows it.
Yeah.
That I had said it will be done in 2 days, and it took me more than 2 weeks to actually sit down and write it. And the advantage here is half of them I have actually known at close quarters.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we were growing. I mean, I finished school in 71. That's the year Anand released. That's the year before that, I think Goody had happened and so on. We went on. I mean, it's happening, you can add 1 degree I passed and Shabana came in, and 1 degree I passed, and Smita, who actually was in the same college for a while, for 1 year, she was a batchmate in FLC, and then she moved to St. Xavier's. But then Smita came on television, and it so went on. And also during this period, 71 to 75, my brother was at FTI. So periodically I used to go. My father was a guest lecturer, so I used to go. But the best part of the Shubhankar being in FTI was that, I used to sit with all these people under that Bodhi tree and have tea, and used to watch films when they were scanning it. So half my film appreciation thing was
Yeah, I think there is a net connection somewhere going a little loose, but
and so on. And Girish Kasrali, her friend,
yes.
I was kind of not I was only to be seen and not to be heard, but I was very much a part of the scene there. So that made it.
That helped. But there is something, you started with Jaya as a girl next door, which was like absolutely, because this was the time that, in the 70s, we always saw Jaya as the girl next door, and maybe you looked at your neighbors around and see who is coming close to Jaya as the girl next door. We have all gone through that. But after that, you have referred to Sharmila. And there is something very interesting, and you've been very bold enough to actually have stated that her Allad intonation of Hindi. And when you wrote that line, it struck me, yeah, she does have that, that Alladi kind of a intonation in her dialogues. I'm talking Sharmila. And yes, so that I think was a very, very apt, that Allad was suddenly the word pops out in while you're talking about Sharmila's way of delivering her dialogues. But then there's one more thing, No,
there's no translation for that word, is there?
There is no translation for that word. Allad cannot be translated. In fact, I was thinking that shall I start off today this session by telling our audience that I'm sitting amongst a Chader heart. But then I realized that I cannot translate Chader heart.
You have lost.
Who is lost? Ratnottama, you have lost. Just check your internet or come back again.
Yes, I didn't hear.
You didn't hear.
I didn't hear what you said in the last.
Okay, I said we were talking about that word Allad.
Now I can hear.
Now you can. Okay, I was talking about that word Allad that you had used for Sharmila. Alladi, which was very appropriate because minute you said I read that and I said, yeah, that's the way she has been. She had that Alladi, Dhong and Bhongi. That is, the mannerisms, translating it into English. So that's what it was like. It was very perfect. But then after that, Tanuja, girl next door, yes. Because also don't forget in the 70s, she was also doing Rajkumari and other such, Teen Bhubaner Pare and Kolkata. So yes, Tanuja. Mumtaz, you have also clubbed her as a girl next door. I mean, she for us was a diva. Like for most of us in the 70s, Mumtaz was like a diva. And then you have made a passing remark on Vajantimala and Hema Malini. Rakhi, you have come down to absolutely girl next door. I mean, we Bongs have always looked at Rakhi as the girl next door.
No, actually, Sujit girl next door is only Jaya and
It's only Jaya, yes.
Yeah. The rest are divas.
Divas, so rest are divas, agreed. Yeah. But there are also people, I mean, there were also some, Smita and Shabana certainly divas. Yeah. And I think it should be very appropriate. I didn't know this, but here is this little piece that is there by Shabana. I'm just reading this out. It says that I was completely enchanted by Jaya Bhaduri after watching a diploma film, Suman. It was unlike any other performance I had seen. I marveled at that. I thought to myself, if by going to FTI, I can achieve that, I want to do that. Now that is Shabana Azmi talking about Jaya Bhaduri, which I think is this is a gem of a statement and it is making a lot of difference. But then coming back again,
sound is off, but I remember this, Ratnadi said, it's very important. Many people don't know that Shabana actually followed Jaya Bhadri. I mean, it's an amazing thing because people don't know about
this. Very true. But I also did not
Jaya
know.
Bhadri was a pioneer, no?
Yeah, exactly. So once I read that, but yes, Vidyasena is definitely a girl next door. Like I said, Rakhi was a girl next door. And what I did not know, this was again a piece of information that Ratnottama has put up over there, that at one point of time, Reena Roy was the highest paid actress in the Mumbai film industry. It was so difficult to believe that. Ratnottama, talking about Reena Roy, can you hear me now? I mean, yeah.
I think her video is frozen.
I think her the video is frozen. And of course, she has talked about everybody, including Ranjita. But then when I was talking about the business of amount of research that has gone in, she has also mentioned some others, saying that these also made it big. And there are notes on Neetu Singh. So everybody in the 70s, as I was telling you in the beginning, has been extremely well covered. There is Neetu Singh, there is Vidyasena, and there is Reena Roy. Well, that she's also featuring in that. What I also got to know from the book, again, a piece of information that came through was that Rehana Sultana was the first FTII graduate to have got a leading role in Hindi cinema. it's mentioned somewhere down. I mean, you can recheck on that. But that's something I think it is there in Maitree's. But there is something very interesting that Ratnottama, this is the part of the thing. I had no idea that Tina Ambani, as now, I knew she used to run this art exhibition and stuff like that. But then here, what you have said, that then after marriage, she got off the film, and she has been holding art auctions, presiding on the administrative bodies, which I did not know. Tina Ambani, administrative bodies of ICCR Delhi, NGMA Mumbai, NID Ahmedabad, Peabody Essex Museum in Massachusetts. She was also active in rehabilitation of street children, providing healthcare for senior citizens, and restoration of the heritage Elephanta caves. Now, when you read this about your popular stars that you have seen acting in all the films like Kars to Baaton Baaton Mein, suddenly you see, oh my God, hey, after retirement, they seem to have grown much bigger in their stature. And Ratnottama, your information on this that's was the first thing I asked you, that where did you get this? Where did you get all this information, and how long it took to sort of put it together? Are all of you all frozen now, or are you listening to me? No, you all.
I caught
No, I
only
can hear you.
I caught only the bit about Tina, and Tina, I must say, I mean, of course, I mean, like she was a star, but I mean, she'd come in later, so kind of, acha theek hai, she's there, but she was, of course, not bracketed with Shabana or Jadi or
right.
Anyway, but Tina, I got to know about her art thing because at one point of time she was big on the art scene, and after cinema and literature, my third, or rather, I should say, an extension of cinema was my art curation and art writing. So she was big on the art scene, and then I was on ICCR's board for a while, and so was Tina, and so on and so forth. So much of this information comes from there, and like I said, quite a bit of this. What struck me was this, the actresses of the 70s. None of them lived the way actresses before them, like Meena Kumari or the others, have lived. Most of them, many of them went on to be members of parliament, whether at Rajya Sabha level or wherever. Ratnottama, of course, had one election, not all of them, but these others, they went into making a place for themselves in industry or professionally outside cinema as well. They earned and then they invested either, some people like Dimple, she went first into candle making, then into something else. And the others, somebody went into styling bags, and somebody went into something else. But they went into designing, went into making a place for themselves as, not entrepreneurs in the big sense, but doing things that earlier actresses did not do. So this again was another area that I was very happy to know. And also the public area, public work, a lot of them took up, working for senior citizens or for the physically challenged. So that was the other thing which was very important. Of course, being chairperson of the Children's Film Society was a kind of the same kind of a thing, doing extension of what they had done earlier, but just branching out into a new field was something I thought very interesting, worth taking.
Super. Well, I want to throw in a quiz over here, and this is very typically a Basu Chatterjee kind of a which is that in what is the name of the company in which Amol Palekar's character Arun Pradeep works as a line supervisor in the 1976 film Choti Si Baat. Now, I'm not asking you all to answer this. I wish somebody who is watching this should put this answer down. The name of the company is a typical Basu Chatterjee. I think I might as well tell everybody now. It's called the Jackson Tularam Private Limited. This is absolutely carrying the stamp of Choti Si Baat and the director. Okay, now let me come back to you. Where is Nirupama? Bharat. Two things I want to ask you. One is Bharat Kumar, meaning Manoj Kumar, and you have also, in fact, you have actually said that some of his best films came when there were too many players in that his contemporaries were, doing great films and they were heroes. That's one, and the other is this good flop and bad flop. But the first thing that stopped me again, that is this an advertising kind of a thing, good flop and bad flop? Because you were talking about Saeed Mirza. He's a very senior colleague of ours in the business of advertising.
Yeah.
So once I had asked him, why do you have these odd names called Albert Pinto ko gussa kyun aata hai? Arvind Desai ki Ajeeb Dasta. He said, well, I have put up the proposition. And Mohan Joshi Hazir ho. So he said that it's up to you now to find out Mohan Joshi kyun Hazir hai. They must have done something. There must be some story. So I give you that little clue over there in the end. You go and figure out why Albert Pinto ko gussa kyun aata hai. So I said, yeah, this is a very interesting way of, So I thought Nirupama's good flop, bad flop. But then when I read that, what was this story, this remarkable story of Shalimar.
Yeah, really.
Oh my God, and even Zeenat Aman keeping Gina Lollobrigida waiting just to prove her point that she's Zini baby, and that to be Gina. Oh my God. This was
Dilip Kumar Saab was supposed to come. He waited an hour and left. It was so insulting. Can you imagine Dilip Kumar waiting 1 hour for both the actresses to show up? What a fiasco that must have been, the press conference, really.
Absolutely, that was
Krishna Shah pain through his nose. One feels the pain, because I've been promoting indie cinema, so one does see the commercial side also. You can't ignore it. People think, films shouldn't make money. I mean, that's a stupid thing to say because it's a profession like any other. So why would a director make a film which should not recover its costs and make money? I mean, it doesn't make sense, right?
It doesn't, but then at the same
for
time,
people to think they should do it for creativity. Roti roti bhi hai na? This is a work for people. It employs people.
वो तो है, but there's another thing. I think in those days he spent 11 lakhs for shooting a
song. Yeah,
one song. Yes. And I think in those days 11 lakhs for one song must have been like running into crores today. If
4
you look
crores
at
was the budget. I have written it there. Yeah, it was more than Sholay. Can you imagine?
Yeah, it was more.
Sholay cost 3 crores because you had technicians from London. But this guy actually set up an office in London. He set up an office in New York. He paid everyone in time. The entire unit got so close, they all cried after shooting, when they were leaving.
11 lakhs.
Very emotional story.
11 lakhs is what Shyam Benegal made a full manthan on. So you
can imagine. I mean,
so you can imagine.
He was trying to appease both Western and Indian audiences. So dono ne reject kar diya. So one feels the pain,
Absolutely. No, so that good flop, bad flop led me to actually know the story of Shalimar, which was, I think, amazing, insight into the whole thing.
Sharing,
Maitryee, now let me come to you. The fat lady starts off with Tuntun, which is great because, then is the only fat lady you associate with the Hindi cinema. But you have then taken this whole thing off to the, the sexy actors or actresses, in the cinema. So suddenly from the fat lady, you're talking about the Smitas and the Shabanas and, the rest of the lot. So tell us what made you look into this aspect, which is a very important aspect. We're not disputing that. But what made you look into that, turn it on from the fat lady to the...
The essay is about sexuality and desire. And I was, primarily talking about desire and the perception of desire, in terms of how our Indian society looks at desire and sexuality, which is why I started with Tuntun, and the way people perceived her is, in spite of being an actor, a character artist in so many films, she is reduced to the terminology of a fat lady, which is appalling, appalling to me, really, which made me think about how people look at sexuality and desire. In a certain sense, the Hindi film heroine, today more than ever is reduced to that small quality of how desirable or not she is, in many ways, which to me is a large statement of how we have progressed or not as a society, in terms of both looking at women, our own growth in understanding desire, and not understanding it also. Like in my Uttam Suchitra book, I do a sort of comparison here also, where on the one hand, I talk about films where, Smita Patil is blazing the screen with her, sexuality of fully covered Smita, only with her sexuality in her eyes, vis-a-vis, in Dastak, for example, the female protagonist, doing the first full nude scene as a sign of protest. So I think in many ways that is sort of speaks about our cinema, not only in terms of experimentation in the 70s, but how things started moving in the 70s, and what games it was playing with our minds, because these experiments were not only experiments in the script, they were experiments with women, they were experiments with desire, they were experiments with our own understanding of who we are as people and how we look at cinema. So that's where I was coming from.
And it's
No, as a
very
matter of fact,
interesting,
yeah,
Sujit, it's very
yeah.
interesting that, a fat lady couldn't be desirable in the Hindi film construct, but
Yes.
a fat man, a pot-bellied Sanjeev Kumar was desirable. I found that, the intercontextuality between essays also very interestingly played in.
Also, Maitri, I think we deserve, Satyam Shivam Sundaram deserves an echo by itself. You know why? That kind of film could not have been made today. Nobody would dare make it. Number one.
Yeah.
It's highly erotic, and it also, it's about faith, it's about eroticism. And also, like you said, that whole decade was great social change and lot of cultural modes changing, very dynamic that decade.
Yeah. And if you remember
Yeah.
Raj Kapoor Saab's, very scandalous comment, let them come for Zini baby stills or something like that.
Yeah.
Let them go back
He did
watching
that
the
with the
watching
Ram
films.
Teri Ganga Maili also.
Yeah, so you
but,
realize, that how he was playing with the psyche of the
Correct.
viewers, right?
Very interesting.
Uh,
Yeah. True.
Yeah, and like we come from the land of Kama Sutra, desire can't be not be part of who we are, right? So
Yeah, I see here you have quoted that line from Raj Kapoor over here when he says that let them come to see Zeenat states. They will go out forgetting our body and remember the film. Now, that's a very Raj Kapoorish statement, and others like Parveen Babi followed suit with certain.
But he did have an emotional core in his films, and music.
Exactly.
It always touched you, whether it was Satyam Shivam Sundaram or Ram Teri Ganga Maili. I still remember the music.
I think that was just the
Brilliant.
Punjabiyat in him speaking, and
Yeah.
expressing.
He had a very strong emotional core.
It's not that he meant anything bad.
Yeah.
It was just his way of sort of,
He was
expressing
being
it.
lazim. Everyone exploited women's bodies in cinema. He just did it openly. That's all.
And of course, you have mentioned about Mumtaz taking the call wearing a towel, which was natural, but as against Kangana hanging around in a towel in her Kanpur home.
I
Oh
didn't
my
say
God.
anything about.
This day,
Let's
I
see.
see. I don't think I said anything about natural or unnatural.
Yeah.
What I actually said was I found the whole feminist take on Kangana's
Yeah.
towel scene quite odd in a sense, because when Kangana says something like that and sort of comes across in a very badass manner walking with a towel in that scenario, it's but feminists all over the world term it as something very in thing to do. When Mamatas did it so many years ago and didn't think of it as a feminist act, that is a problematic thing for me, in the sense that a woman being sensuous, it is not necessarily, does not have to be a feminist act. It's just a natural act. A woman coming out of her bathroom in a towel is a natural act. It's like saying, why should a woman wear a swimsuit in a beach? It's rather stupid to say something like that. So in we are in the 2024 23, whenever this Kangana Ranaut film came out, and feminists saying that this is the height of feminism is rather absurd for me, when Raj Kapoor was doing Ram Teri Ganga Meli back there in 70s. It says that we haven't progressed
Myra Babu
anywhere at all.
Raped in a towel in Victoria number 203.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah. There's a whole song.
Beautiful.
Thoda sa thehru. Yeah.
And it was because of the situation. It was because.
Yeah, correct. That's a song situation, right?
Exactly.
You had Roop Tera
Yeah,
Mastan.
and in fact, like I keep coming back to that, Sanjeev Kumar had ठंडे ठंडे पानी में नहाना चाहिए इन्हें
Let's not
चड्डी
go to Sanjeev Kumar in a towel, please, now.
But Thande Thande Pani, that kind of a lyric only Haribai could catch.
Yeah, really true. In fact, Maitryee, you have written a line over here. I'm reading that out. It says, looking back, it is easy to see why the 70s are regarded as interesting and refreshingly sexy. And because sexiness really confines itself into to shedding of clothes, one must delve into others forms of sexiness that this era was all about. This era was really all about a little bit of titillation, but not very
It's
indecent.
just a comment on how sexy I find Smita Patil rather than an unclad Kangana Ranaut in that
Oh, yes.
towel.
Oh, yes.
I couldn't say that, but I'm saying it right now.
No, but as a man, I agree with you. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm responding to that as a,
So,
as a male.
which is what I meant by sexiness has hardly anything to do with shedding of clothes.
I know. True, very true. Okay. Amborish, you have to unmute yourself. Now, Vijay versus Vijay. One is the angry young Vijay who is trying to break the system, and other is the Marathi Vijay Tendulkar writing his stories on his anger. That's also social anger. It may not be, in a way, it's also an anger against the system. Sakaram Binder for that matter. And the rest of the lot, you have mentioned Sakaram in detail. So tell us what made you get on to this Vijay and Vijay.
Actually, all of my writing is kind of an indulgence in nostalgia. I use terms like film historian, etc., to add some heft to my shenanigans. But what I'm basically doing is kind of indulging in my childhood. So I grew up in the 80s and 90s. So most of what we were watching was Doordarshan and on VHS. So the kind of cinema we were exposed to were these stark contrasts of the angry young man, and on the other hand, there was the so-called parallel cinema. So one part was that these two contrasting worlds, and the other was I had just, when Shantanu told me about this anthology, I had just written a piece on Ardh Satya, and I had researched. While writing the piece, I had researched on Vijay Tendulkar, and I find him a very interesting figure. He was a playwright, and he used to write some plays which one can't even imagine staging today. I'm sure some of his plays are staged today, but the content in them was so radical and so angry for the time. It was intended to make people cringe and shift in their seats. That is the intended impact that he had. So that was another reason that I had just written on Ad Satya, and I was working on that, and that idea just came to my mind that this is interesting. The violence in Salim Javed's films, where they constantly try to shirk that responsibility of, there are always questions targeted at them, of inspiring violence or instigating violence at some level. And in that era, the kind of violence that was shown in their films, some people said that it kind of spilled over onto the streets, and young people going astray, as always. They always tried to shirk that by saying that violence existed since a very long time, and it has nothing to do with our cinema. But Vijay Tendulkar actually embraced it. He thought violence is a very integral part of the human existence, and it is not something that he wanted to disengage from. In fact, most of his work is about celebrating it in a manner of speaking.
Yeah.
True. So that's
Amborish, if I can just go back to late 70s, actually, when I started writing for screen, I had interviewed Shyam, one of my earliest interviews, and there I had asked him, because we all talk about Vijay Tendulkar and Salim Javed as the people who brought in violence in such a big way. But if you go back to Shyam's film, I don't think Ankur or Nishant were by Vijay Tendulkar. I can't remember.
Ankur was not Nishant. Ankur was not Tendulkar. Nishant is. Yeah, Nishant is.
Ankur was a very muted, that is the first film where he actually says that violence.
right.
Nishant is very
the
moving.
little child picks up a stone and throws. That's the Nishant had a lot of violence, and had asked Shanti why so much violence. You had such a muted violence in Ankur, and then here you have so much. So he says, but violence is so natural. I mean, we are always, we are sitting and talking, and if suddenly there's a loud screech outside on the street, a car comes to a halt with a screech, it's an accident, it's violence, it could be crime, people throwing gali or fighting on the street. We immediately run to the window. There's a part of us which immediately wants to know why, what's happening, kya hua, kaise hua. I grew up in Bombay. If suddenly there was an accident on the railway tracks, my God, I mean, the fact that the trains were always running on time, and an accident on the train was the most horrific kind of, violence. So, and Shyam talked about these, and he said that it's very natural. And until then, the kind of violence that was shown, I mean, Anarkali or whichever other films we take, which we see as violence, Ganga Jamna, we hardly had violence. Violence was not a part of our everyday experience until
So if you see the essay by Amitabh Kumar, the very first one, he calls Nishant a very negative film. Before writing this, I sent him an anthology of essays on Vijay Tendulkar's plays. It's a National School of Drama publication. These are very difficult to find. I fortunately have access to them. I sent him that. It's essays by all his contemporaries, Vijay Tendulkar's, and it's about violence in the world of Vijay Tendulkar. Very fascinating. Yeah, sorry, Amborish, you're saying something?
Please continue.
So, I mean, they all said that obviously he wanted to show how low man can fall, debasement of man. That's why Sakharam Binder is supposed to be very violent. Nashiram Kotwal, all of them are you know.
Also, his violence was very not so much physical all the time. His violence was internal also.
Psychological, yes.
Very
Internalized.
Yeah,
psychological
yeah.
and very internal. Today, when you read Sakharam Binder, I've not seen it. I've seen
I've read it too, yeah.
glimpses of the performance by Sayaji Shinde, which is there on YouTube. But when you read it today, what you get is a lot of violence, which is extremely brutal,
Yeah.
but not always physical. I mean, you actually physically cringe when you read it.
Yeah, even
Nishant
for
is
that
actually
Akrosh,
difficult.
for that matter, the film where Om Puri plays the mute Akrosh, is it?
Yeah, Akrosh, yeah.
yeah.
Govind.
So,
Huh.
Amborish, like that, his character doesn't say a word, but the violence that he
Oh,
brings
yeah.
forward.
His eyes, my God.
The only sound that comes out of him is in the end, there's a visceral cry that he lets out.
Yeah.
And you actually feel that coming across to you.
Yeah, it just goes up your spine, you know, that scream. Yeah, that's absolutely.
So Om
I
Puri
think-
was like the,
Yeah.
I mean, like the antithesis to the Angry Young Man for parallel cinema, in a manner of speaking. If you look at even Ardh Satya, muted anger
Absolutely.
in him and his character.
It's like a volcano, it's going to erupt any time. You can feel that build up. That tension building up is amazing.
Yeah, but what happened was with Salim Javed, there were always the punches being made. You know, there's always a dishum, which was an outlet for the violence with Vijay Tendulkar, Om Puri, and you know even a scene like the scene in Party, the final scene in Party where Nasiruddin Shah comes in. So it's an extremely violent scene, you know, but there's no violence as such on screen.
Amborish also, since you talked at length about Salim Javed, I think in Amitabh Bachchan, he was a fantastic at those. That I think 70s is his best decade. I feel superb, the range. So that simmering anger which, Salim Javed managed to get in his characters, whether it was Zanjeer or Diwar, I thought that was beautiful there. And he did full justice to it.
And
Simmering all the time.
Salim Saab has spoken about it in several interviews. I've quoted one in the chapter where he has said that all the heroes before Bachchan were of a certain kind. They were in a manner of speaking, they are always whining and complaining about the world, but not doing anything about it. This was the first hero or that kind of a figure who actually took it into his own hands and did something about it. But speaking of the violence, even in Diwar, which I've mentioned in the book, if you go through Diwar, there are very few action sequences, so to speak, apart from that go down scene. There are very few extended action sequences, but the simmering intensity of the writing of the character, the anger in the character. There's this one scene after the fight in the go down where he goes beneath a tap and washes his head.
It's trying to cool down,
as if he's fusing.
Absolutely.
So all of that comes through in that film. So today, if you ask anyone about Diwar, they would categorize it as an action film and very, very violent film. But when you watch the film and, beat by beat, there are very few actual fight scenes in the film.
Yet it's so powerful, that anger in it. Even Kala Patthar, I adore
I was just coming to Kala Patthar, that one sequence where he says, "Tu to gaya dhanna." He doesn't have to shout, he doesn't have to scream. He just says, "Tu to gaya dhanna." Like enough, you've had it.
I think he really hit his peak in the 70s, Amitabh Bachchan, honestly. Such a great fan of his work.
Gajra, you not audible.
Yeah, everybody is audible. Who? Ratnottama?
Gajra, please speak.
That even the two so-called totally non-violent films, there is Anand and there is Alap, but you can see the anger in this.
Alap, definitely.
Very interesting. The anger of Alap is very interesting.
Very interesting,
In fact, Amborish, you have said somewhere in your essay that in a Salim Javed film with Amitabh Bachchan acting, the audience is made to wait for that violence to happen. I mean, it is leading towards that violence, and you're waiting for that thing
Correct.
to explode.
It's like a
Whereas in-
release for the audience
Yeah,
also.
the
You know,
release
it's a
and- yeah,
cathartic
exactly.
experience.
Exactly.
You want him to beat up somebody in Sholay.
Yeah,
And Jay is
that's
that
yeah.
so lovable, that character.
Yeah,
So that's I think.
Please
And of course, in case of Vijay Tendulkar, it was flowing through the story, whether it's like Hasiram, whether it is Sagaram, yeah. So that I think is where they no. So coming back to this book, and I've got one more section just to talk to the user over here, which is Shantanu, which is that this. I hope everybody who is watching this and will watch this on YouTube from tomorrow, I will be totally convinced that there has been no other book on the Hindi cinema of the 70s than the one that we are talking about, the swinging 70s. I also do like the cover design. It has got a very Peter Maxish, that is the 1970s style of, the head kind of a thing that was to happen then. But now coming back to you, Shantanu, your essay on Gulzar is actually a book by itself.
It took
mean,
too many pages.
It took
My
too many
first-
pages, but you couldn't give it up because you
I
were
know.
talking about him as a scriptwriter, as the director, as this, actor, that. Okay, Maitryee will have to leave in 5 minutes. We understand. And Maitryee, in case we are continuing, thank you very much for coming in. And as always, I will keep tapping you for joining our Addas from time to time. We will do one on Uttam Suchitra, but yes, Shantanu, that Binoy Mojumdar, I will
Yeah.
hold you to that. Yeah.
Maitryee, Binoy Mojumdar,
Yes.
I'm waiting for that script. I'm the user.
Okay, so that's it. Yeah, but then you have written a book on and then you have covered everything: his music, his lyrics, to his film direction, script writing, and also his politics. And I don't know if this has been done on purpose, but you finished Gulzar, and the next page you move on to is Rakhi.
Yeah.
I mean, was that a conscious decision, or was it just happened by the Sakaram binder did his binding that way?
No. Like,
No, I think that was just a serendipitous occurrence, as Nirupama said. And in fact, Gulzar Saab, when I gave him the book, also pointed, "Acha, आपने मेरे long short story को मेरे बाद ही डाल दिया है." That kind of so yes, but that was. I think Rakhi, we do tend to forget in terms of her contribution. We talk of the Jaya Bahaduris and the Zeenat Amans, but Rakhi occupied a very, very important, she had the capacity to take a film like Tapasya to the huge success, and at the same time 27 Down is very, very important film. 50 years now. Yeah, this year is the 50th year of 27 Down, and what a character that was. And probably the one Amitabh Bachchan heroine who actually was an equal to Bachchan, in terms of, she always had that stature, she was unlike Rekha or a Parveen or a Zeenat. She had a certain stature when she was playing of Amitabh Bachchan, so I thought that's important heroine to cover. And of course, Gulzar, the whole ecosystem that Gulzar ji sort of was part of, the Rishikesh Mukherjee, the Basu Chatterjee, the Basu Bhattacharya film, and Gulzar Saab was a lot of that put together. He composed he did some of the best songs of the era. His films were, from Mere Apne to Meera, were a different genre of films. Some of the finest women characters that he brought to screen, and of course the politics of his films were also, one tends to forget that Andhi is a film that has no other women character in it. Suchitra Sen is the only woman. There's not even a side character who is a woman in that film, and yet it's a film about a woman in politics. So those kind of things are important, and he has been, a confluence of literature and cinema like very few people.
I think Sujit ji, when you said, why was the Rakhi chapter planned after Gulzar Saab? I think Kung Fu Panda, if you guys know this film, Master Ugwe says there are no accidents. So
yeah,
if you see
yeah.
Dr. Mohan Agashi's interview, when we were first, trying to prune it for the book, he starts by, उन्होंने मेरी class ले ली, literally, he really took my class. What do you mean Hindi films? Then, he gave me a whole lecture because he's a very learned person. He's a
Oh, yes, he
psychiatrist
is.
too. And, he's worked with us in NSD on
Yes.
psychology and how, theater can influence children, learning. So he started talking about Sumitra Bhave. We kept it consciously because there is a reason. We wanted to show that Marathi theater and films also influenced Hindi cinema and played a
Oh,
major
yes.
role.
Oh,
I mean, we
yes.
could not cover Marathi cinema, unfortunately, or Bengali or Malayalam. But this was just a hint to tell you that this is Bombay after all we're talking about, a
Tendulkar is the
filmmaking
best
center.
example.
So,
Vijay Tendulkar, Amol
correct.
Palekar,
Correct.
and
Amol
Mohan
Palekar,
Agassi.
Mohan
These are
Agassi, Dr.
Sriram
Sriram
Lagu.
Lagu, Jabbar Patel. They're all from the
Exactly.
same college. Jabbar
Jabbar,
Patel, Sriram
Hindi
Lagu,
films were a little less, but the
Agassi, yeah.
others
Yeah.
in that order perhaps,
Correct.
but they
So Pune had a lot of exchange with Bombay during the
Right,
70s, and he calls it Chota Parivar, Sukhi Parivar. He said we were this bunch of, thoda pada likhe log, jo film festivals bhi jate the saath mein, it was a nice group of
As
people.
also in your Dr. Mohan Agash story, there is that another collector's item is that letter from Satyajit Ray
Yeah,
asking him to say that can you work for me in this
correct.
Sadgati
He
and
says compared to that, today we have slave contracts.
yeah, today we have same
One deal.
contract. And he said, if you are not well, I'll fly down to Mumbai and I'll
Yes,
meet you there. Yeah, that's amazing. But there's
yes.
one thing, Nirupama, I wanted to ask you because when I was reading your introduction, there was something I wanted to ask you. Do you still sing? Because
Yeah.
you said that you started
Yeah.
singing and that got you into. And the other reason why all those small red, blue tables in the classroom, those nursery class, those you mentioned about it. No, there's a reason why I said, oh my God, that's because maybe some years before your time in Lucknow, I was doing the same thing in Hazratganj.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, a major part of my schooling has been in Lucknow. So,
nice.
and that is one city I love to go back, and I only hope next life I should be born in Lucknow.
The cradle
So-
of Tehzeeb, right?
Oh, it's amazing. It's still amazing. So,
Yeah.
and we
In
were
fact,
schooled.
Sujit
we-
mentioned that, I said this is so typically 70s, bichde parivar ke, same school.
Okay, Shantanu.
Yeah.
Anand Bakshi. The last thing I need to know. It's really philosophy. I totally agree with you. But I'm so happy. But I know Shailendra he passed away in 66. And maybe after that, Anand Bakshi came into that mode of, not just lyrics or songs, but it was the philosophy, the emotion and everything that it is. So I think that is a very wonderful inclusion. And you have described some of his songs in that. So coming back to the book, I think everything Hindi cinema in 70s. Now let me ask the editors, will you be doing a similar one on Bengali cinema? Ratnottama, I'm asking this on your behalf as well.
Oh,
I'm the wrong person actually about Bengali cinema, although yes, I have a
Yes.
very large body of writing about Bengali cinema, but people tend to forget because I'm a Bengali, they think that I'm
No, Sujit, one of the things I am putting together is a book on
I would
directors of
immediately
Bengali
prefer
cinema.
And
Mhm.
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who's,
there's a book that I'm putting together with somebody on
Okay.
30 film directors in Bengali cinema, and trying to get a sense of the journey of Bengali cinema. Let's see how that shapes up. It's
Okay.
in the process of, but yes, if I had my way, I would probably do, monographs on a lot of these are, we don't have a national cinema. Hindi is also regional cinema, so if you actually look at it, Hindi is also regional cinema. I'd like to do, the best of Marathi cinema or Malayalam cinema, which is like going great guns,
Gujarat.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
and Bengali cinema, of course, rich history. Just even if you leave out the big three, the Ray Ghatak and Mrinal Sen have been done very much. There's so much to cover there. Maitri will have a lot of, and leave out even Uttam Kumar and Suchitra Sen. There's so much, I've written on Sabitri Chatterjee, one of the greatest actors, just because she comes from Bengal. She's not so well known, but, so there's a lot to do. I
Yeah.
would love to do a Bengali version of maybe a bigger history of Bengali cinema. A very close friend of mine, an author I've published, whose book I've published, Adur Gopalakrishnan's, a book on Adur Gopalakrishnan, Parthajit Barua, has just done a brilliant book on the history of Assamese cinema. I was very, very keen on taking that on, but then of course, finances, the moment you say Hindi cinema, the market expands. The Assamese cinema book has just been published by I think it's Routledge US, which has published the book. So it's a brilliant book on its own. So I would have loved to do that, but
Sure. Gajra, what is your next assignment? What are you giving us?
As in television.
Excuse me, but I have to rush.
Okay, you have to go to
I'm
Ratnottama.
sorry, but
Okay, thank you very much for joining us, and we will keep in touch and we'll catch up. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, Gajra, tell me, what are you up to now?
So are you? मैं 2 नाव पे सवारी करती हूँ. So mean in on screen, or do you mean in terms of book?
In terms of फिलहाल किताब के बारे में बताइए, बाकी वाला बाद में पूछेंगे.
My first attempt at historical fiction, there is a character whom I am very taken up with. I'm usually very afraid of historical fiction because one has to be very meticulous in researching and then let the imagination take over. So that was very daunting, but Shantanu has helped me take the decision that I should go for it. And I'm very, very excited. I hope to publish maybe by next year. And of course, the OTT and the television struggle continues.
Super, super. Amborish, what next?
Yeah, so I have just finished the book on Raj Khosla, and the ones on the anvil now are a book on Ray's advertising years, and which is again being published by Shantanu. And
I see.
yeah, there is another book which I would be working on, which is Utpal Dutt's biography.
Wow.
Which is very interesting to me, because I thought there is a certain aspect of Utpal Dutt that springs up in points when you mention his name outside of Bengal. It's always a very, very funny pot-bellied man. He was anything but. So the rest of India doesn't know about that. So that is what I want to delve in next. There is
we've also your book of essays, Amborish, which is you just submitted about a week, 10 days back, which I'm very keen on.
Yeah.
You will, you will get the contracts for that soon. So I'm really looking forward to Satyajit Ray and this Satyajit Ray in advertising. And of course, Utpal Dutt I'm hearing for the first time, so let me call you after the show.
After the show.
So this
And
series of
Amborish, if you
essays
need any material.
Sorry?
I was just saying that in case you need any material for your book on Ray on advertising, do stay in touch.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I need a lot of help on that one. It's a
You keep calling me and I'll give you whatever you need.
I'll do that.
I'm very excited to read your Raj Khosla book, Amborish.
Yeah.
And Utpal Dutt, of course.
No pressure.
I should come under pressure and finish my short stories and poems. I need to publish them. I've been having had them for the longest time.
So you all have things in your hand, and Shantanu, what is your book? Next book is on poetry?
No, yeah, poetry, I keep a separate thing. I don't think I'm sort of good enough to publish a book on poetry yet. I do indulge in it, but I don't like inflicting too much of it. I'm not sure of my, so every time I think about doing something in poetry, I read Rainer Rilke and I then hold myself back that, unless you get to that level, you have got no business to be writing poetry, so that is, but I'm very interested. I'm very excited about a couple of books coming up, and Amborish, if you can make it to this, we are publishing a book called Ray on Ray, Sandeep Ray talking about Satyajit Ray. There's been a lot of books on Satyajit Ray, but nowhere has Sandeep Da talked about so much. We are having this event in Kolkata. Maybe Amborish, you should, if possible, come down, meet Sandeep Da for the advertising book also. And we are actually also coming up with a book on Mrinal Sen, which is his one long interview, over 30,000 word interview, which has never been published. AIR, somebody did it on behalf of AIR, and AIR lost this. Thankfully, the interviewer had the material, and we are publishing it with other stuff on Mrinal Sen. Couple of these are the film books, but apart from that, a lot of other books are happening. Like I'm very keen on Manto translation by Rakshanda Jalil. I'm very keen on a Dalit story translation of Bengali Dalit stories by Aruna Chakraborty. So it's there.
Okay.
So working. So my poetry it takes is just going to be on the back burner just to.
Super. So we look forward to staying in touch and keeping up with each other. It has been wonderful having you all over, taking the trouble. We have done about an hour and a half, which is what I think we would have gone into. I know we should have invited some more contributors, but that would have made this session a 9 o'clock show by Arnab Goswami. Where you find all the participants almost coming out of the television set because they don't have, and shouting at each other. So this was a very Bhadralok kind of a session that we had. And all the best for this book, since we are discussing this book, all the best to the book. And I really think this is if you're in the 70s, this is it. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sujit. Thank you so much for doing this. And we have to meet at Kunzum to talk.
Yes. Yeah. We can continue further. Nirupama, since I'm in Delhi, we will keep meeting up. And in fact, the senior most, I was telling you, these IAS officers I work with is the word, is 93-year-old, by the way. His name is SK Mishra, in case you. Yeah, so that's and the rest are aspas. So that's why I'm becoming a bureaucrat. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gajra.
Thank you for endorsing our book, speaking such warm and gushing words.
No, my pleasure. I really loved it. That's it.
Thank you.
Simple.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amborish.
Thanks
We'll
everyone
talk.
for joining.
Gajra, thank you so much.
Thank you, Gajra.
Nirupama will talk about the reprint.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Right. Bye.
Bye-bye.